I wish good things to you who's watching this. I am Alexey, and this is episode 18 of your games analysis, where as usual we'll be taking an in-depth dive into 3 games that y'all have sent me. The first game is actually the most interesting one. I'm gonna start right off the bat with that. The third is the most complex one, so we're leaving this for the end. And the first game was sent to us by a viewer with the screen name FNT King. And it's not just about the game itself, it's also about, well, what we can learn from it. So the message I received had a few questions in it, saying that basically FNT has started playing recently, but it currently sort of feels stuck at around, if I remember, 300, 350 rating points. And the question is, how can we progress further? And how can we start winning against stronger opponents, or at least against higher rated opponents? And this game is played against somebody who has been playing for a really, really long time. I think more than 10,000 games. They played with a screen name Joubois and rated around 530, if I don't remember exactly, but that's the idea. Now, you don't see the ratings of the players on screen because I assume this game was played in arena mode, but you have a rough idea. So we're just playing somebody from the perspective of our protagonist who is significantly more experienced, and we'll see which things we can improve. And we get to start the game. We get to start with the monastery. Our opponent responds right here. Then, of course, we get to start a new city. So far, standard openings. And now already comes the first non-standard move of the game. This is a bit of an awkward tile to play, and I can think of 2 moves. Well, first of all, we need to exclude this placement, this placement, this placement, just because it bothers our features without helping our opponent's features. And my option 1 is just to go here, add a point to my monastery, then also prepare some road ends that we can build in the future, prepare another monastery spot. There is a downside that sometimes our opponent can get maybe something like a horse and go over here and take 2 points and then get a straight line like this and then block us, but it doesn't happen often enough so that it would be a problem. Another option is to go here and start attacking our opponent's road, and it's a very efficient way, but it's really very risky because our opponent can very easily get a straight line and start breaking this square, maybe even go here and trap 2 meeples against 1. And also create some pressure against the meeple at the top. So between these 2 moves, I'm probably going to choose this one, or this will be my second option, of course, with the meeple on the road. And this is what you chose, but with the meeple on the different side of the road. But there are a couple of problems with this. So first of all, if you are going to put in this square, then we kind of have to try to attack the road. Otherwise, we're giving our opponent a road end. And this is just an opening principle that it's good to follow, unless there is a very, 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 very strong exception, like unless there's very good reason to, just don't give road ends to your opponent. And in this case, you even give road ends directly. But I actually would avoid giving road ends to my opponent, even if it were something like, imagine your opponent has a road like this with a meeple on it. I would even avoid placing a road end here if I can help it, because your opponent can easily take a curve and then cover their road on one side. So basically just help your opponent more than you help yourself. The other problem is this here meeple on the 1-point road. Normally, it's not actually such a bad idea because there are ways how you can end up building very efficiently. So let's say if you get in particular this here rose tile, then you get to finish this 2-point road, and you also get to meeple the city cap like this. But the problem with this idea is that it only really works if you draw that rose tile, or in a couple of other combinations, such as, let's say, if you get a starting tile, and then you get a crossroads, and then you sort of protect this road from a curve, like, so your opponent cannot get easy 4 points like this. But again, it's not super likely scenario in any case. What's far more likely is how your opponent can start inflicting damage on you In particular, with a cow or a horse, they can place a meeple over here and then start controlling this square. So that would be quite unpleasant. That would be like a quasi-Ukrainian technique where they play with one meeple against two of your features, one of the monastery, and then you can end up being forced to continue your opponent's city and lose some points, or you can end up just losing your meeple entirely. Your opponent can end up with a big ruin and so on. Your second monastery spot is going to be in jeopardy. So there are a lot of problems that can occur. So yeah, principle 1, just don't give road ends to your opponent, and principle 2, you don't want to be over efficient with 1-point road. I know I have been doing myself like this sometimes, but you know, there are different circumstances. So there are exceptions to everything. There just doesn't happen to be one of them. So generally, especially below the 500 level, 500 rating level, you just want to keep things simpler. But luckily for you, you do get a road end, and this now is absolutely time to bail out, to go over here. Also, this meeple by Joubois is a bit interesting. I probably wouldn't do that, but basically what they're trying to do, they're trying to kind of protect their city a little bit so that you can't create an attacking platform without prolonging their road. They're also trying to protect their road a little bit, but again, from their perspective, it's also just not worth spending an entire meeple and then trying to save it later from all the attacks, especially since the city, the green city, can be attacked from here. Hi Carcassonne, hi Zur. So FNT King, yeah, so it's now our turn from our perspective. And I'm thinking either this, to try to be just a bit more efficient and to prepare that second monastery spot, or maybe just play it simpler and go over here. You play another move, which is this, which is actually not bad, but again, you're helping your opponent's road more than you're helping yourself. So that is the problem, because for example, your opponent now can get a road end, and then they will finish your road, whereas you still have to work for this monastery. I understand the idea behind this move, that you maybe want to shorten his road a little bit. You actually don't want your opponent to put a curve here, but its value is only 1 point, and there are some other ways how opponents can damage you with a curve. So for example, these here two straight lines, or not straight lines, but road pieces, create an opportunity for either side to go for a 4-point loop over here. And if somebody builds a 4-point loop over here, this creates another platform to start making your meeple vulnerable. So generally, you actually want to avoid creating this here pattern with two kind of road ends being in parallel, just because it's a very easy way to score 4 or even 5 points with a crossroads, unless your opponent needs already a bunch of curves in other places, and then you can benefit from that configuration yourself. Yeah, and the same problem with this here 1-point meeple kind of stands, because we want to get it back as soon as possible, simply because your opponent could get a cow, could get a Dorito, could get an extender, and place a meeple over here on the city and start playing against that square. But this is not what your opponent gets. They instead continue their city, and now this leaves us with a bit of a dilemma. So we got ourselves the dream tile, basically, the main tile that justifies the existence of this here meeple. Wait, why can't I put it? That's interesting. I'm pretty sure we're going to solve that problem at some point. Yeah, but basically this tile goes over here. There is something to be considered. Normally you want to go over here and attack this here city, but you would be giving a road end to your opponent, and you would also be losing a very valuable tile. I feel that your choice here is actually justified. Allow your opponent to complete a city, just for the sake of that efficiency, and your opponent does indeed complete a 10-point city. They are ahead on the scoreboard now, and worse, you're now forced to break your own city, and you do pick the one at the top, which makes a lot of sense, I think. Well, it can be debated which one is better. I do like your choice, because this square can become a bit vulnerable if you break your bottom city by accident. But yeah, it's indeed an unfortunate tile to have drawn. So they go over here, and also they try to not only finish their road, but also continue their second road, and also, of course, to block your city, which is why it's an excellent spot on your part. Rather than completing a city or starting a new one, of course, we protect, and we still create a threat of drawing maybe 3 Dorito tiles and finishing the city with a 3 Dorito pattern like this, so your opponent needs to tend to it. And I actually disagree here with this move. I think it's more urgent for them to do something like this and start breaking your city, because it looks unpleasant for red just purely visually, but given the fact that all 3 starting tiles are still in the deck, okay, well, they get a Dorito, then you can just get a starting tile. Now, ideally, if your opponent gets something like a cow tile, we don't want that to happen, because not because we won't be able to draw a starting tile, but simply because now this here monastery spot becomes more vulnerable. And luckily for us, we get a curve, and we can put it over here and try to save that monastery square, and that would indeed be the perfect move. Yeah, I do think that this is correct here. And again, just sort of solving the issue of the sensitive square and creating a fantastic monastery spot next to your own monastery. Now, your opponent can go on and try to continue blocking the city, but actually there's so many city caps remaining that it's reasonably safe there at the bottom. And you're also pre-building a 3-point road in case you draw one of the 2 remaining rose tiles. But here instead you went for this, and this is... I can understand this move, but it's somewhat problematic. Now, it is 1 point, but there is an issue that it breaks a monastery spot next to your monastery. You really want to keep that open. And the second is that it increases the vulnerability of the square. Now, the upside, of course, is that whilst your opponent tries to block, you immediately have a square for defense, which is exactly what you do. So that's also very important, that you didn't get greedy, didn't try and finish one of your cities, that you actually took the time to defend. And still, it's not a bad situation for you. 3 tiles fit into that square. But it could have been just much, much better with a monastery spot over here. Your opponent now decides to break your other city, which I'm not sure I agree with entirely. I guess it makes sense, but if he's trying to block this guy, then he's better off blocking this guy, because again, you very wisely now covered the city up. And it's a move that requires a bit of discipline, because honestly, it's super tempting to go here or here and try to protect your other city. But once you've covered this up, then the tile that goes here is immensely powerful. You're going to get 19 points on the scoreboard, 10 for the city, 9 for the monastery, 2 meeples back. Maybe you even get to meeple this here long road that goes through it. So it's actually a pretty good position for green, and for red, sorry. And if your opponent invades that city, well, that's perfectly fine. If your opponent blocks that city, then it's a passable ruin. So still, good position. Your opponent starts a new road, which is wise. Well, I'm not sure about the road meeple itself. I guess the road meeple, it's fine, but most importantly is that he creates a blocking platform against this here square. And now we have a monastery, and it looks like completely perfect tile, right? Because we get to go over here, and we meeple it for 4 points. We control our opponent's road, and we also support our city. This is just so beautiful, with 4 tiles remaining that fit into the square, and the 2 attacking platforms eliminated, and the blocking platform eliminated. It's just a completely dream tile, but you instead go over here. And this is really the main mistake in this game. Now, the city does not look like it's the end of the world if it's getting blocked, but you want, if it does get blocked, at least you want your opponent to work for it, because now your opponent does this, and then all the threats is gone. So we lost that meeple without some real compensation. The city now has only one platform for expansion. And even that, with a simple straight line, can be thwarted. So, yeah, I wonder exactly what was your thought process, because that's also pretty interesting. If you didn't want to go here for fear of getting 2 meeples blocked, but then my answer to you is that this here square is actually pretty secure. Well, there's only one dagger tile remaining, but still, there's just so many city tiles that you'll be likely to go something over here. And sometimes, even if your monastery gets blocked, then your opponent was going to need to work a lot for it, and then sometimes you get to block the road as well. So let's say you go here with the monastery, they go here, they go here. In the meantime, you go here with the cow, and then you start putting pressure against this square. So very often, you come up on top there. And another important part, sometimes you just get a rapid succession of city caps or Doritos. Like, imagine you get a Dorito here, then suddenly your city is covered up, and then bam, 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 3 city caps, you score like 24 points for that city. So even if you don't complete it, it's nice to have the option to complete. So you want to keep your options flexible, you want to have threats for the future, you want your opponent to spend time and tiles, and sacrifice points and meeples to invade or block. So instead, your opponent has just a very cheap blocking option. But okay, the game continues. It's still not such a bad position, especially now, as you have a 5-point monastery already. And I do like your move here. In the meantime, your opponent tries to block your monastery, so this spot even ended up even less safe. But I do like your idea of just doubling down and tripling down on this here tile. Now, you get that tile 7 out of 8 times, so around 87% of the time. And it's okay to invest a 3rd meeple there, because those games where you don't get any starting tile, you probably lose regardless, just because you already have 2 meeples tied down to them and then a 3rd one blocked over here. You might as well just bet on this tile even more. It's a completely reasonable bet. And actually, you don't want to leave this road open, because your opponent's going to get this here long road and just get a lot of compensation for you drawing this tile. In the meantime, green is trying to build at the bottom and also put some pressure on your monastery squares. And now comes another interesting move. Hi, Helga. So, we have 2 meeples and our monastery is about to get obstructed. So really there's not much to suggest actually. So the move is just to go here and start a new city for potentially 8 points. It's a pretty safe square, because the only way your opponent can invade it is by prolonging your road, and also you obstruct your opponent's city a little bit. Instead you do this, which is quite understandable. So it is 2 points. And the important part is that now your city is free to be continued with maybe tiles like this or Doritos and so on, because now your opponent cannot go over here with a straight line and block that square. But regardless, it's still a misprioritization. So normally, if we have shielded tiles, then the principle of efficiency is that we want to use shielded tiles for unshared, completable cities. Yes, unshared, completable cities, just so that you get 4 points for the shielded tile itself, and now you get only 2 points for that tile. Moreover, the additional value of obstructing your city a little bit and also securing your monastery, because your monastery actually is still not blocked. There's still one tile that fits over here, and let's say if your opponent fails to draw a straight line, you can maybe draw a crossroads here and actually save it and still have a 50-50 chance of completing your monastery. And you need that 50-50 chance, especially Because now that you're going to complete your 8-point city and then have this 50% set up, then there is a universe where you might even win this game if you don't draw any of these 3 critical tiles that fit into that square. To have just one additional coin flip in your favor, if it gives you a lot of points, so it's going to be what, 4 here and then 9 for the monastery, 8 for the city. It's just really a lot that gets added to your scoreboard. You can really improve your winning chances. Your opponent blocks you regardless, that's fine. You get those 4 points regardless, but you would have had a couple of more points. So just imagine the same situation with this tile not here, with this tile here, and the shielded and the city cap here already, right? You would have already have more points on the scoreboard, and your opponent's city would be much more vulnerable because you can attack it from that here square. And now let's see what happens later to that city. Of course, the downside is that this city would be a bit more vulnerable, but, you know, it's like not super important. And also, we're actually running short on big tiles regardless. Like, there are only 2 cows remaining. Okay, extenders. The extender is nice to have. But, you know, even if your opponent goes here with a straight line and tries to break it, you still have chances to bail out, like with these guys, for example, or these guys. So it's not that urgent to expand that city. In the meantime, your opponent tries to sort out their road and start a new city. Yeah, and you do continue your thing. And now actually I wonder. Now, I think definitely at below 500 level you want to keep it simple, but it is not crazy to just start a new city, even if it with a Dorito. It is a shielded tile afterwards. You have 2 meeples. Actually, you know what? Yeah, probably prefer a new city, like somewhere maybe here or somewhere here perhaps, trying to break your opponent a little bit. Just because you're trailing behind, you want to, you know, put a bit more efficiency in there. But this move, perfectly fine. This move, perfectly fine. And your opponent continues building. You really cannot do all that much. You continue your road, but actually I wonder if maybe we could delay that a little bit. Because there are a couple of things which I'm not a fan of here with this move. Well, one is that we protect our city, you know, our opponent's city by accident, because now this square is a bit too safe, but that's not a big deal. The problem is that your opponent can get a curve and try to invade your road and connect these 2 roads. So I wonder if it wasn't crazy, instead of continuing your own road, to actually go here and start breaking your opponent's road, because now they're going to have all this configuration where 2 of their meeples, let's say, are in mutually destructive positions, I guess. So basically, if you go here, then if your opponent finishes a city, they give you a platform for blocking the road meeple, and if your opponent finishes their road, they give you another platform for blocking their city meeple. So that here configuration. And also, now that I think about this, I'm not too concerned about the security of this here road meeple, just because if I get the starting tile, then we're going to get 2 meeples back regardless. We're going to have 4, and that's just enough to have in hand to fulfill any objectives in the rest of the game that you might need. But still, that move is completely fine. Maybe it's just, maybe I'm jumping here like a couple of levels. Like if you're already 350, then it's completely fine to continue your road. However, you know what? Like if you can see that idea, if you can see how you can bother your opponent more than you bother yourself, then yeah, then go for it. I mean, it's never too early to actually try finding the best moves. At least now you managed to save your road. In the meantime, your opponent is developing his city into a threat, and this forces this here action. And yeah, it's indeed unfortunate that this is the case, because now you're going to be short on meeples. So maybe if we managed to go here a little bit earlier with this here tile and create that blocking platform, we could have made it so that the city never grows big enough to be threatening in the first place, so that we get to save our meeple for something better. But now I do agree that you have to invade. There's another approach possible. Instead of invading, you could also go over here and just leave it empty, knowing that there's only one cow tile remaining. Or I'm not sure how your tile counting is. If you don't want to count, that's also fine. But I guess you can just look quite quickly. There's a lot of clunk on the board, so there may be one, there may be two left, but there are not a lot of those big tiles regardless. But still, invasion, a completely solid move here. I think that's actually makes the most sense if you want to sort of minimize variance in this game. And now comes also a very important move in the game. You made something which is not like necessarily a big mistake, but this move that Red is about to make is going to cost you this game. So what's the principle here? We are 11 points behind. However, we have a lot of points on the board. We have around 10 over here. Okay, it's 9. And then 8 over here. We have a long road, monastery, city. So actually our position is pretty good. And these two meeples yield dividends. The only downside, of course, is that we're still waiting for this here tile. Actually, there's only one of those remaining, so our position is pretty bad. Yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult to win without that starting tile. But let's say if we do get that starting tile, then we have to assume now that it's going to happen pretty late, because there are 30 tiles remaining, and only one of them is the tile that we want. And this means that if we invest a meeple now, then we're not getting a meeple back anytime soon, or possibly ever. And first of all, I'm going to show the move that you made, and it's that one, and it's kind of makes some sense, you know. So you score as much as you can, you cover up your ruin, which I guess is a bit unfortunate, but you know, you still have this here chance to develop it by getting the Dorito and then maybe a regular Dorito. So covering up your ruin is not ideal, but it's not such a big deal. Now you do start a new city, and of course your opponent is going to immediately invade, and now you're stuck without meeples for a long time. And this is obviously where your problems are going to start. But what do we do? How do we act instead? Because if you watched some of the streams, you've seen that at the World Team Carcassonne Online Championships, you know, players would spend their last meeple and they would start new cities. But there are exceptions. The only way how you can start a new city is if it's completely unobstructed outward, and if there are a lot of city caps to finish it, because then chances are you're going to get a city cap before your opponent creates a platform to block or restrict. Now with this city, it wasn't like fully possible. I guess it was. I guess you could have gone over here and started a new city like this, but then you still leave another city cap open, and that's, I presume, something that you didn't want to do. So I have two things about this. Not leaving city caps open is important in the early game. In the middle game, it gets less and less important, and when you're behind, it actually sometimes is desirable. Maybe sometimes you want to gamble by leaving those empty city caps. A second thing I gotta say is that it's not good to leave an odd number of city caps, but it's good to leave an even number of city caps. So the move here that you should have played was just simply going here and leaving both of those city caps out in the open. And then the idea is that in all likelihood, your opponent's going to pick one and you're going to pick the other, and then nobody's going to get an advantage. Maybe 20% of the time, your opponent's going to pick out both city caps, and like 15% of the time, you pick up one of the city, you pick up both of the city caps, and then the vast majority of the time you get one, your opponent gets one. I think I've gotten those probabilities wrong a little bit, but that's sort of the general idea. So leaving two city caps in the open is pretty safe. and that was the move here, then it also kind of solves all your problems. You know, you have scoring opportunities with the crossroads for these here roads. You have scoring opportunities with city caps, and then you still can develop your ruin a little bit with the extenders and Doritos and stuff like this. Yeah, so actually you're just completely fine having one meeple. Hi, Yannikut. Elias Machan is saying the odds of one cap each are close to 50%. I think it was more than that. And it also depends a lot on how many city caps there are remaining and how many tiles total. So I actually didn't really look at middle game positions at all. I spent some time with the calculator for the opening positions. But yeah, but you basically, it's just a principle again. So you want to have a meeple in hand, and if you are going to spend your last meeple, then just do it for a very, very good reason, and then make sure that you put it like away from everything that your opponent cannot attack. Actually, yeah, so your opponent got a really annoying tile because you can't finish your city immediately. But even if they get a straight line, then suddenly you have already a big problem. You actually have only a couple tiles remaining, one of which you already need over here, that can give you a meeple back. Yeah, so your opponent keeps blocking your road. Now, of course, well, you can't really do much with this tile, but you can start making some obstructions. And this obstruction happens to work. You actually prolong your opponent's road and make sure that they cannot use a tile like this. But it was a bit stronger, I think, to just go here and not add a point to your opponents and try to block them later, even though it might have not worked out in that particular instance. And now let's start counting our damages. So your opponent's threatening to complete your road. Oh, that's a bit of an imprecision here. There's actually no rush to connect those cities. It was much stronger to go here and block your opponent's meeples, and then try to connect the cities with something a little bit later. Because if your opponent gets back-to-back curves, that is just something too painful to deal with. Now, for example, now your opponent can score 3 points and then get a curve. So they get 1 point extra because they get to score 3 instead of 2. And then they're probably going to get 2 extra and a meeple back, which is already 4 extra. So this unification of the cities is not justified. Let's actually count the value of the moves. It's also something that's useful to see. So you see you have 3 tiles here, and your opponent had 7 points over here. So the value of the connection is 4 points. If you go here, you're essentially trapping a meeple. Yeah, and a meeple is definitely worth more than 4 points, even if your opponent has 3 more meeples. Plus, you can still connect a little bit later. I mean, your opponent can block with a Dorito or something like this, but you can still connect later. Like, you're not guaranteed to lose that city connection opportunity. Yeah, and you see, so your opponent now gets this, which just solved their position very nicely. Now you block a city cap, which actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a very nice move. So you're trying to... but the problem is that you give your opponent a 9-point monastery. Yeah, I didn't... kind of forgot about that. Maybe you didn't want to do that. But I understand the desire to block the city cap. Maybe just leave the city cap open and do something like this. And try to block their meeple regardless. I guess I can also understand you. Maybe at this point you're so far behind that you want to gamble for this here tile and then try to draw this monastery yourself. And then also, even if you don't place this tile over here, your opponent's going to have an 8-point monastery regardless, which is almost just as good as a 9-point monastery. So that's not so much a big deal. This one has to be a mistake. I guess I understand why you're doing this. Maybe you don't want your opponent to try and invade. Perhaps you maybe not counting tiles. Maybe you don't know that there are 8 of these here already on the board. But let's say even if you're not sure, or even if you counted and miscounted, it actually doesn't change what this does strategically. So two things that I have to say. At least with the naked eye, we can see that there are not many of those big tiles remaining, and especially the quadruple tile has already gone out. So this we can pretty easily memorize. Then, if your opponent chooses to attack this city, it's actually good for us, because then we can try to draw those crucial triple city tiles, or we can go over here and block that square. And since we don't have meeples, we don't have other purposes for which you need tiles, so it's actually quite easy for us to block. So when you're behind, you maybe even want to bait your opponent into invading a shared city, just because they might end up losing a meeple completely. So instead of this move, you have two options. One is going over here and trying to block this road. Another one is going over here and blocking this road. So at least that you somehow decrease the quality of your opponent's squares. A third option is to go here and actually block this city cap, so to finish the job that you started. A fourth option is going here and blocking the 7-point monastery. And a fifth option is making a move which is gambling, going over here, and trying to finish a shared city just to get a meeple back. Now, knowing that there are not many Doritos remaining, in fact, there are only 2, the fact that your opponent's going to go over here and try to invade this city is maybe even good, because you can even later go here and try and block that square, or even just draw the Doritos yourself. And in any case, this move here scores you 1 point. So the point of this idea, you see, there were exactly 7 different ideas. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5 different ideas. There were 5 different ideas of productive moves that you can make with that tile, even when you don't have meeples. And those little things, they do end up adding up. Your opponent gets a meeple back. Then, yeah, you try to block that city cap permanently. I would have blocked this monastery spot rather than the city cap. Or again, maybe you even can go here and try and finish this city. And if they block, they block. So it's not such a big deal. At least you can try. By the way, also, had you gone over here with the Dorito tile, you would have already finished the city. Or at least you would have created a threat of finishing the city, and then they would have used this tile over here to try and block the shared city to prevent you from recovering a meeple, and then they would still be stuck with this here road. Yeah, and they do get the 7-point monastery, so that's a bit unfortunate for us, which we could have blocked, by the way. You block another monastery spot, which makes a lot of sense. Quite unfortunate that they're drawing all the road ends. Yeah, you just end up sort of having to discard the city caps. I can see also you just sort of building up the shared city simply for lack of better things to do. Again, here, maybe just don't give up just yet. Maybe start going here and blocking his city caps. Because as we're going to see, the game is going to end up surprisingly close. And you start blocking your opponent. This is absolutely lovely. They unfortunately get the 7 points for their little farmer. And finally, yes, it is unfortunate that it was a long wait, but it is what it is. We get our magic tile with how many meeples back? 2 meeples back. And your opponent's going to get another 7-pointer now. So now it's time to reevaluate the position and see, can we even win this? So we're down 23 points on the scoreboard. These monasteries are roughly equal, so that's 22. The cities equal, and then 23 because we're losing a mini battle here, 26 because of this, 35 because of this. And then we have a long road for 10, so that's 25, and we have a city for 10. So we're down 15 points with no compensation. So this game is not objectively winnable, but we can try. We can still try. My first instinct is to grab 4 points somewhere. But also going here is actually an option. Just to take that 9-point farm, already putting us at -6. And then, you know, I think I see a path to victory. So we go here, and as tempting as it is to take the 4 points, we take the 9-point farm. The reason why we take the 9-point farm is because it's just so easy for our opponent to take the 9-point farm themselves on their next turn. And even if our winning strategy is to try and induce them into making a mistake, like, they're not going to fail to notice a 9-point farm, or at least it's unlikely that they're going to do so. And the idea is this: we go here, we go on the farm, and then our opponent panics, and then they try to, I don't know, go here and invade the farm, or whatever. No, maybe they try to go here and invade the farm, like, through this here square. Then we either block or we just draw the tile that they need, preferably both. And then we end up only being -6 because your opponent scores a 0-point farmer here and we score a 9-point farmer here. Then we can score 4 points with a city cap. We can score 4 points with another city cap without investing a meeple, and then we're suddenly ahead. And then we can even get a monastery here for 6 points and expanding our field as well. So I think there is a winning idea, is that we try to go here, we go for the farm straight away, and then we try to draw quick points later and also hope their opponent gets a mistake. So you get the 4 points there, which again is understandable. Your opponent now absolutely has to take the new 6-point field, but they failed to do that. Instead, they take a 3-point field, setting up another city cap in their field, of course, but it's nowhere near that good. Now, we have some interesting options here. My first instinct is to go here and try to score 11 points. So we go here. We're down 14 at the moment, if I remember correctly. So if I go here, and then on the next move I get this here city cap, and then if I drop a farmer here for 3, that's like 14. Well, that's 11. We're still down 3 points. Yeah, I don't think there's a path to victory objectively, but that's one thing that we can try. Another thing, we can maybe go here. And yeah, maybe actually it's better to go here, so we go for 6 points. Yeah, and then we get 7 for this here city cap, and that's 13. Because that's more points than 11, right? For the same tile combo. It's a bit counterintuitive, because this looks very, very good. But actually, if we just go anywhere like here, that's 6 for the farm, and then we get 7 for this, so that's 13. And then we're only -1. And then maybe we just get a monastery, and that's all we need. Because your opponent could go here, but it's not going to do much for them, because this city cap is in your field. Yeah, maybe that's your path to victory. Maybe we need to just do something like this and hope that we draw this exact city cap on our next move. And we need to draw that city cap in any case to deny them the 7 points. And to deny them 4 points here and 4 points over here. So yeah. You went for this idea, which again makes a lot of sense. And it's a perfectly natural move, but yeah, again, they went for the monastery, which is a mistake. By the way, imagine, if only we have gone for the farm. If only we were to have gone for the farm. Then with this here tile, you would have now scored here. So you would get the 7 points, but differently, because your opponent, they probably would have not noticed that they're adding you a city cap in your field. Now you get this tile, you only get 4 points. So now you got 7 instead of 13, right? So you got a 6 point less. Yeah, and then now you get the 9 points. So which means that by how much we should be losing by not that much actually. Maybe there's not all that much that we could have done about this. Yeah, actually there wasn't really a path to victory there. We needed to draw the monastery as well. But anyway, so the end game is not like that important for the purposes of this particular video. It's just typically we look at entire games and there's always something from learn for anything. So first of all, again, this was surprisingly close, as your opponent didn't notice some of the fields and you did manage to take advantage of those fields, so that was very nice. Unfortunately, that was when that's already too late. And look, you lost by only 5 points, which means that there are many things that could have occurred to save this game. I just go through this again. The main one is not panic after losing all your meeple. Like, losing all your meeple was bad, but look how you almost came back. And I think if you can just find a bit more productive meeple-less move, maybe instead of building up the shared city, trying to put some pressure on your opponent's meeples, and most importantly with this here tile, if you just were to block your opponent's road, well, that's already kind of worth 5 points and maybe even then some. So that's one option. And then, and then there's just some other things that we could have done potentially. Now, before losing all your meeples, of course, the fact about losing your meeples itself, you do want to keep one meeple in hand pretty much at all times. And if you make the exception, then you need to make sure that there are multiple ways in which you can recover a meeple easily. Like if you have a 4-point road waiting to happen, a loop which you're about to complete, or maybe another straight road for which you only need a crossroads, and then like a monastery which is only missing 1 square, and an open city cap, then it's safe for you to place your last meeple on the board somewhere, just because you're likely to recover one. But yeah, playing meepleless is a pain. And before that, just sort of some small opening things about leaving road ends for your opponents, then some prioritization things. I think the main one is just not allowing your opponents to block your cities too easily. Now, you don't want to go out of your way defending your features because, you know, you end up just not completing them regardless and then losing all the energy. But the point is that this here monastery spot, it was a fantastic spot in any case because you still have your threat, you're controlling your road, and when the stars align in such a way that you can accomplish multiple things with one move, it is typically a good move and maybe even the best move. So yeah, with these here tips, like you change these 3 things, it's already probably worth like 50 or 70 rating points because you're going to just start winning so much more often. Yeah, so other than these things, actually, like, well played, some nice difficult prioritization moments with this here tile and with this here defense and so on, and with meepling this road and doubling and tripling down on this here tile. By the way, just because tripling down on this tile puts you into trouble does not mean that this was a wrong move. It definitely wasn't. It was also a 10-point road, so that's a completely worthy investment of a meeple. Just a reminder that just because something didn't work does not mean that it was wrong. Also, just because something worked does not mean that it was correct. Alrighty, if any of you have any thoughts about this game, then do let me know. Otherwise, I'll be moving on to the next one after a very short hot beverage break. Yeah, so see y'all in like 90 seconds. Alrighty, time to move to game 2, which was sent to us by Yannickut. And our antagonist is none other than the 2-time world champion Pantelis Lizardopoulos of Greece. And this again is in arena mode. So here we get to play red, and we even get to start the game, so that's a nice start. With 4 points. Some natural moves to follow. Now here comes the first imprecision on your part. I mean, of course, you do want to start a new city. I wonder if that's even a misclick. But of course, you want to point this outwards. You don't want to allow blocks or invasions like this. You want to continue your city unobstructed. Do let me know if that was a misclick or that was just a miss, or if you had any reasons for turning the city that way. Just kind of an opening principle that we want to keep our features unobstructed where possible. Your opponent also plays something interesting. They invade your city instead of making the standard move. The standard move is actually to go here and try to have an unrestricted cap against your restricted cap. But the reason why they played like this, I think they're trying to keep the variance of the game low, and they're sacrificing some equity as a result. So what I mean by this, for example, now in this position, if red gets something like an extender or a double city cap, then they don't have a good square for it. I guess they can still go here, but it's not as good as red continuing their city. But the same is true also for yellow. If yellow gets an extender or a double city cap, or even a single city cap, there aren't like that many good squares on the board. Generally, of course, the high equity move is to go here and then try to finish our city and then start putting pressure on this square by red. That way you just win simply a higher percentage of the games from yellow's perspective. But we're here not to talk about yellow's moves. We're here to talk about your moves. And you do get the quick points. Your opponent does this, which is pretty interesting. No, I guess that makes sense. I would have continued this city a little bit differently, but again, whatevs. So now, what do we do? There are 3 blocking moves. There's 1. But then the problem with that move is that your opponent can just do this and cover up and finish like this. It's still a decent move. Then there's this option as well, which is actually also really strong because it plays against 2 squares rather than against 1 square. So it creates this platform for blocking or invasion, and it also creates a problem over here. In fact, I do like this move, maybe even more than I was going to suggest. But the move that I was going to play is going here. And the reason for this is because it's both attacking and it's both blocking and scoring. So you meeple this, and then you try to get a straight line to continue a 3-point road, and then another straight line to get a 4-point road, and then you block this square ideally. And then if your opponent gets something like a dagger tile, they go over here, and then they force to help your road or invest another meeple to prevent that from happening. So that's a way to just have your cake and eat it too. You go for this move, which again makes sense, makes a lot of sense, but there were 2 other blocking options which were stronger. And you see now your opponent just sort of brushes it off. Now you start, yeah, you see, now that's good because you both start a new road and you also block. So you do 2 things at once. Your opponent is preparing to finish a city. It's also smart of them to do this rather than to do this instead, because then their city would be more vulnerable for invasions. Now, even if you block it, they're still going to have 3 starting tiles that fit here. So that's a good move from yellow. You kind of build your own stuff and already have quite a considerable lead on the scoreboard. Oh yeah, by the way, let's just put on the tile counter here. Not that we're going to need it anytime soon. Your opponent discards a tile for which they didn't have a good square. And now here's one of your moves which I really like. So by now most of my viewers will know that going here in this position will be too weak, We have 5 meeples. We're not in a rush to continue our city. This is absolutely a moment to abide by the principle of 2 cities. The move that I would have played is just going here, because it's extremely annoying. Actually, I still kind of like it, because it breaks your opponent's loop. It forces them to have 2 crossroad tiles to end their road, and later when we finish the city, we'll actually be able to maybe even block one of these 2 squares. So this is incredibly powerful. But I do like your move a lot, because you now make it so that this square is even more vulnerable, trying to build all the way around it. So that's absolutely lovely. And now you see they can't really go over here, but maybe they still should. I think if I'm yellow, or at least if I get the same version of this tile but shieldless, I'm probably going here. Oh, no. I think there's a strong move from yellow's perspective that they missed. Going over here is pretty cool. Yeah, because look at this. We're going here, and we actually quite significantly obstruct this here blocking square. Then if red, from yellow's perspective, gets a city cap, then we can get something like a straight line, and we can build a 5-point road through this square. And then, of course, we're still starting a new city in a way which is likely to hurt this red guy, because from yellow's perspective, red needs to do something with this meeple first to either connect to this city or obstruct it, and then this meeple is going to stay unattended for a long time. This would allow yellow to go here and here and here and here, and then maybe even put some pressure on the square. So there are even some scenarios how yellow loses this meeple, but red loses one of these 2 guys in return. But yellow missed this. Instead, yellow went there, which also makes sense. It's just not as strong as the other option. And then again here, I think you found a really, really powerful move. So my first instinct in this position is actually to finish neither of the cities and do something like this, just to score the 3 points, also to create an additional vulnerability next to my opponent's city. And that is solid, but instead you went for this, which normally would not be a good move, because it's quite easy to defend that city, normally. You know, 6 tiles normally go there, and with any straight line or something like you can save towards... So with any monastery, you can save towards a starting tile, and with any straight line, you can save towards a rose tile. But the recognition that all 3 rose tiles are drawn early makes this move so good, and this city is now so vulnerable, and your opponent basically can't save it. So they go here, they just make their top equity move, starting a new city and continuing the road, and now you actually block that city permanently. So that's some very nice recognition of an unusual tile run out, which should be changing our strategy, and it did. So this position is now amazing for red. Like, red should be winning here at a very, very high frequency. It's not just the blocked meeple, it's that there's no compensation. There's barely any stuff on the board for yellow, and already 14 points on the scoreboard is what red has, and red's features are just completely safe. Elias is saying that as yellow, we should have done the other move. Yeah, so with this, just going over here and make it safer. Maybe. And especially so that there are still 2 splitter tiles available, that sometimes we get this opportunity to split and fill our city regardless. Yeah, from Dark Passenger's perspective, it's definitely much worse to get your meeple blocked, but I think I understand why they didn't want to do that. First of all, the shielded tile. Unpleasant to share shielded tiles. And second, the scoreboard deficit. They kind of felt that the need to be a bit more aggressive in scoring, and that sharing cities is not the way to go to catch up. So this move that I was suggesting is kind of a way, you know, to... it's a way to accomplish some of these goals, at least partially, basically. To sort of both score and prevent yourself from being blocked. Interestingly, that your opponent gets a monastery which they cannot use. You just calmly continue your city. They continue their own. You also continue your city now, so natural move, so farm. And you now decide to continue your city like this. It was actually also fine to do it the other way as well, but this is the move that makes the most sense. Allowing no invasion possibilities at all, and still all 3 starting tiles remaining here, and a couple of daggers as well. Now, they found a good move. It's definitely a worthy farmer. Even though they don't want to create big fields when they're down a meeple, this here field is actually pretty good because it can be quite closed. They can easily score 9 or 12 points and maybe block some squares here and here and not allow you access. If you're not careful enough, they can even score another field for 9 points and they can manage to try and run away with the game that way. And now here comes a move which is really your first mistake in the game. And I think it's quite understandable where that mistakes come from. So it's not necessarily... It's not the worst idea tactically, but if you consider the overall game position, you'll see why there's a better move. Now, the move that you played was here, starting a 5-point monastery, and it has some upside. So first of all, 5 points are 5 points. It is the best monastery spot on the board by far, but there's nothing close. Well, maybe... Yeah, but this is not ideal because you're expanding your opponent's field, and this here is vulnerable. Then maybe this is an option for 4 points, but then you're giving away a road end, and your opponent can score here, which can also help your opponent to create this here attacking platform or blocking platform against your city, not something that you want necessarily. So in terms of the monastery spots, this is the best one. But what are the downsides? Well, the answer is this here square. Your monastery gets blocked at a pretty high frequency there. And normally I'm not so precious against meeples, but you got to think about this one strategically. You have a bit of a scoreboard lead, you have a threat here, and your opponent is a meeple down. The way how you can win these positions is you preserve your meeple majority, and you just win with a big field because you have meeples and your opponent doesn't. Now, if you're going to go here and you're going to lose that meeple, well, then suddenly... And also, you're very, very likely to lose it. Your opponent is just going to go here with a Dorito, here with a straight line, and then you lose it. And even if you don't lose it, you're actually going to end up spending Doritos or other valuable shielded tiles on a shared feature, which is going to lead you to lose, let's say, the points that you gained as a result of this placement. Yeah, so if these here guys weren't here, that would have been, of course, a completely different situation. And also in some situations, your opponent actually gets a shared city over here, so you're not necessarily happy with this situation. Yeah, the move was just simply to go here and score 3 points. Because it only scores 2 less, but it preserves the meeple. And it also plays against this here square. And it also actually blocks this square, which means that it contains your opponent's field a little bit. Because I can see some situations where your opponent can go here and then maybe get a dagger and score 6 points for this city, and then 4 points for this road, and then try to expand that farmer and drop a second farmer, and whilst your monastery is going to get blocked, then you're not going to have that meeple advantage anymore. Maybe sometimes you even lose this here city, and if you lose this here city, then you're going to be at a meeple disadvantage. At least now I start seeing all these ideas, how yellow could come back into this game and actually win. If you just play the simpler move of scoring 3 points, well then, strategically you have more options. By the way, another important thing to consider is that I mentioned that this city could get blocked. And it's not a very dangerous city. I mean, it's dangerous for your opponent because it can score, but it's not dangerously placed. It's not likely that it's going to get blocked. But if you do complete the city successfully, then most of the time you win the game, regardless whether you place the monastery here or whether you score 3 points. So we're just going to look at all the possible eventualities and see like which move actually helps you win the game more often. Is it this or is it this? And then you'll probably notice that these 2 extra points don't really compensate for the chances of having your meeple lost for the short term or for the long term. Helgi is saying, how about starting a road monastery 4 points at the bottom, pre-building a road? Oh, that's a lovely suggestion. I like it, actually, yeah. So I still like the 3 points over here just because it accomplishes all their other things. But if you're going to use the monastery, yeah. Because look at this. It's pre-builds a road here, which is kind of nice. And it has a lot of green squares for monastery clusters in the future, so you can win the game that way. And another important thing is that you control this here square. So your opponent now cannot go here and start blocking your city easily. Yeah, that's a very nice monastery placement, so that's well spotted, Helge. So yeah, so there are definitely alternatives to this. And that's a pretty nice move by yellow. And you see, now they're getting the quick points. Now they're catching up. So now, well, it's time for us to use our temporary meeple majority and fight for the fields. Just going here for 6 points and then hope that your opponent does not draw a city cap, and then we can get a curve here and try blocking them. And you did this, which is definitely a mistake. It's a mistake simply because it's not a field move. Like, that field at the top is too good. And let's say if you drop a farmer here and then they end up re-invading and you lose that field regardless, you still get something out of a situation because you take out 2 meeples out of the equation. And the more meeples you take out, the more the absence of this here yellow guy is going to be felt. Now, the issue here is that you're trying to block your own monastery, really, because your opponent so often is going to get a Dorito and do like this. And then the position turns into basically even, you know, unless you finish your big city, because, okay, you're going to have a meeple blocked for 8 points, your opponent has a meeple blocked for 4, so overall there's a slight advantage for red here. But your opponent does not get this tile, they get this. Now again, we have a chance. We should really, really take away this 9-point field, but since you created the threat over here, you're now doing this. Which again, it actually makes sense. Because you don't want to get blocked, and you also want to obstruct their city, and then now your ideal plan is maybe to go here and here and here and block this city, and then later do something like this with a straight line, and here go here with a 6-point monastery, and then maybe even go here and finish your monastery without helping your opponent's city. So something like this. Now this allows them to, okay, they choose to start blocking, whatevs, and you finish your city, which is fantastic. But now again, the other mistake. I'm not sure exactly what the logic was here. Very curious to hear, but you know, meepling a 2-point road in the middle of the game is just really not the way to go. It's also, it's open on both sides. There are not that many crossroads remaining, and like exactly what's the risk here, you got to ask? Because the reason why we meeple things in general is to prevent these things from being taken away from you by your opponent. But will your opponent really get a straight line and meeple this 2-point road segment? If they do, good luck to them. But even if you believe that your opponent meepling a 2-point road is a big threat, there's still another 2-point road over here. And there's like a 3-point road over here waiting to happen, and another 2-point road over here, right? So this is really just a waste of a meeple, which again is a problem for future field fights and stuff. So it's a very good position for red, but here you're just being a bit too gentle with him. We don't want to give you know, a world champion, which you didn't know at the time, I know. Well, not anybody, but especially a world champion, chances for comebacks. Alrighty, and you see now there's the problem that's starting. They're starting another 9-point field, and now worst case scenario that could occur is that they get another big tile here and the city cap here, and now they commit themselves a Sokushimbutsu, and you know, they have 12 points for just 2 squares, and this is exactly how they could come back. But you're not going to let them do that, at least for now. You start a new city, threatening to finish city, drop a farmer. They now, I think, should go here, but they don't. Maybe they are really, really trying hard to have the idea of having their farms separated. Personally, I think it's not worth it, because the threat of red finishing their city and dropping a farmer is just way, way, way too urgent. And from Yellow's perspective, yes, ideally, of course, we want to have something like a big tile over here, but when are we truly, really going to get it? So instead, they start a road, which is understandable. I still think it's not the way to go, but whatevs. Now, also another instructive move here, actually. So what could red do in this situation? Option 1 is go here, start fight for the city. That actually would make some sense because you're still ahead, and then you don't want your opponent to get 2 quick city caps and try to cover up the city. Because now if you invade here, then you can easily draw one of the 3 remaining horse tiles to go here, then complete the monastery with another monastery. Another option is to go here. Let's see if we can actually make that happen. Yeah. And this will do 2 things. Well, first of all, it will make sure that your opponent cannot easily immure themselves, if that's the word. I think that's a word, yeah. Well, I guess they can still get a Dorito tile, which would be quite painful for you, but at the very least, their field will be open for invasion. At least a big tile, a cow tile, is not going to fit there anymore, and you might actually just drop a red farm already here regardless, because even if you go here and you lose that farm, at the very least they're going to lose 6 points because they're not going to score twice for these here cities, and you know, you're also renewing the threats of the completion of your city. But instead you went this and also dropped a farmer here for 3 points. I think I can understand the reason of this move psychologically. It almost feels like you have so many meeples, so many more than your opponent, that you can just afford to spend them like it's almost the end of the game. But there's still 34 tiles to play. You want to be spending meeples on most of your moves, but not necessarily on every move. So this here move, well, first of all, it's problematic because it's a 3-point farmer, with really not a lot of chances for development. The only real chance is getting this here tile, putting it like this, and then getting a curve, and then invading all the way through. But if you wanted to go for that idea, we can do that later. We could do that when it's more safe to do so. The second problem is that we're obstructing our road. And the third problem is that we're actually destroying our monastery. So it looks like you're helping your monastery because you're adding yourself a point, but you're actually being counterproductive because now, in order to complete this monastery, you need, well, basically this tile. Yeah, you need like the 1 remaining road Dorito, or you need like some sort of city plus road tile. Whereas before, if you don't go over here, just imagine how many options you have. Ideally, you have straight line plus monastery, so there are like 7 tiles that can fit there productively. Or worst case, you can have curve plus curve. It's a counterintuitive thing, but monastery buildup. So basically, in monastery buildup, you gotta think mid-term rather than short-term. Rather than adding the first thing that sort of comes to your hand that you can put next to your monastery, do try and think it through, like exactly which 2-tile combo or 3-tile combo or 3-tile combos you're going to use to continue your monastery, and then you're just going to become so much more efficient. So yeah, so the issue with this move is not so much the 3-point farmer, it's really this here obstruction. Because at the very least, the 3-point farmer, even though, of course, it just doesn't really do any good at the moment, it could still sort of be salvaged. Like, you can go here and then just build your own little counter farm. All right, your opponent takes the 3 points. And now comes another interesting idea. So here, there's clearly a best move available. I understand that your first instinct, of course, is to go here, because now, well, you're building up your monastery. But. There's something much more important. And when you place this move, like this, you create the greatest threat in Carcassonne, which is finishing your city and dropping a farmer. Which is why we should finish the city and drop a farmer. It's a pretty straightforward move. But I understand, since you're sort of short on city plus road tiles, you chose to do stuff like this. And I can see that, okay, your idea is I want to use a city plus road tile here, and then later I'm going to use a city plus field tile to go there. The problem is that there's so many road tiles remaining. Like, your opponent is going to go here regardless, and he's going to, you know, obstruct your city. But the difference is that you're not going to have an extra meeple in hand, and you're not going to be able to have the points from the city in hand. So a position where you have these 8 points on the scoreboard, but this square is still missing, is definitely better than a position like this with a straight line over here. And also now there is an additional problem that your opponent can get some sort of big tile and now start playing against this square. Also, now you're going to have a chance to lose your 2 meeples, so yellow is getting those chances. But it is actually quite interesting that it's simply a consequence from this monastery buildup, because you've put yourself in a position where you need city plus road tile in a bunch of places, and then you went here, and now also your opponent gets dream tile. They get to go over here, sort of covering their little 9-point field, and actually covering this field as well. So road monastery for you. Now we clearly see your idea. That's a nice find, just taking 2 points. Also obstructing your opponent's city, and I presume now quite overtly going for this here dagger tile, trying to invade that field, which I do agree with. Of course, the problem is that we are relying on that idea in the first place, and then if your opponent's going to go here, you're going to need the same dagger in 2 places, but it's definitely at this point, it's absolutely correct. Your opponent chooses to play a blocking move, which is pretty interesting. I guess that works, yeah. And the reason they chose to do so, I mean, of course, they're counting tiles quite meticulously, and they just see that there are 6 city plus field tiles, actually 7, and only 2 city plus road tiles, one of which you already need over here. So actually, they're limiting you to only the starting tile, which is pretty cool. And the one disadvantage is that they're sacrificing points. Well, 1 point to be exact, because obviously they can't really score anywhere else. And they're giving you the opportunity to score this here 4-point road. Alrighty, so you get a Dorito tile, which I would think twice about where I want to place it. I don't actually want to place it over here just yet, because there's still 2 splitter tiles, and I'd like to get my meeple back for the future. I can also do this, I guess, and then hope for this here dagger. And sort of now I have a use for the right-handed dagger here, for the left-handed dagger here. Those are legit options. Option 3 is that I can go around this here area and, you know, try to obstruct any of these here squares, because my idea is still, from Red's perspective, that we go here, we get the 4 points, we get the monastery meeple back, and then to make sure that that's possible, we just gotta try and play against these here squares. Yeah, you go for that idea, which makes sense, and now your opponent makes something really interesting, and I think bad. Oh, no, they don't. Wait. What am I misremembering? No, this makes sense, but am I misremembering this game now? How did the farms end up being... Oh, okay, I remember. I remember how the farms ended up being connected. I remember now. Yes. Of course, there's another path through here. But I still don't like your opponent's move one bit. Because they need to try and secure their city. A move that they absolutely had to play in this position was going over here. Yeah, and I just wonder why they didn't do that. And then they can try and block the square a little bit later. So it certainly seems like a bit of a waste, but it ended up working out because it puts you in a difficult position, right? You have this here city cap, and then you have a difficult choice, either to take these 4 points and block yourself, or keep the 50-50 chance, but then also create an opportunity for your opponent to take these 4 points and block yourself regardless. It's a lot to consider here. I do like your more simple choice of just taking the 4 points, simply because from Red's perspective, you don't necessarily need to get that meeple back in order to win. Right? Yeah, right. And just by preserving the 17 points of advantage over the scoreboard, I think you're doing just fine. So your opponent has a 9-point farmer. At the top, you have a 6. It's like very, very close to being the same. 4 points over here versus 4 points over here. Like overall, you're a meeple down for something like 10 points. It's a pretty balanced position so far. Hi, Napamai. So they, of course, continue their city. And also, it's very smart for them that they fill this square first, because they counting tiles. They notice the dagger asymmetry, that there is still one left-handed dagger remaining. So in which case, if red goes here, then yellow is going to still have one option to place a tile over here. But this is not true, but the reverse is not true if yellow were to go over here. If red goes here, this city is completely dead, which also why I didn't like this move here in the first place. Yellow really, really needed to go over here, but somehow it all ended up working out for yellow. Now red has a very tricky position here, because what do we even do? My first instinct is, of course, to go over here and take the 4-point road and take the monastery meeple back, but then our opponent is only one tile away from finishing the city. Like, they're just gonna go here. So won't we be helping them? But the more I think about this, maybe it's not such a bad idea, because we will be getting this 4-point road. And let's say if we don't go here, and our concern is that our opponent is going to get a city cap, well, then imagine if we don't go here. Then if your opponent gets a city cap, they're just going to cover up the city here, and then they're going to go for this here square later, and they're also going to get this 4-point road for themselves. So maybe it's okay to just take the damage now, and almost like the city is still in our field. But I understand why you don't want to go there. But if you're going to score 2 points, then definitely instead of scoring them in a place which obstructs your own city, you gotta find the other option. You gotta go over here and score them 2 points in a place where you can obstruct your opponent's road a little bit. You see, well, they get this tile here regardless. Oh, they don't. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. So they actually end up not going for it either, because you see, from their perspective, it's different. From their perspective, they don't want to give you a monastery meeple back without the guarantee that they're going to finish their city. So actually, nobody wants to fill that square. And here I probably have to agree with them. They also end up completely blocking 2 of your meeples, this 2-point road and this 4-point city as well. The road is a loss. The city, though, can still develop, so it's not too bad. And now from Red's perspective, it's pretty difficult, because I guess you want to invade the city, but you really can't, because there's only 1 invasion tile and 2 splitter tiles, and you only have 1 meeple, so you find your best move, which is going here. and actually finding an opportunity to invade the field, which is pretty cool. Your opponent does this, and now it's a game. You, of course, get the 2 points. This move from your opponent, I don't quite understand, because I don't think it's a very good move, because there's some scenarios how you could get this and this tile and go here and here, and then try to benefit from this here score. Now, normally you make these moves from yellow's perspective only if their tiles remaining to fit into that square, which there aren't. Maybe they're miscounting or something. Probably what they should be doing instead, they should be going here and trying to start blocking the square. Actually, the more I think about this from yellow's perspective, if they go here, then you only have 2 tiles to invade, and these are really good tiles, and ones that if you go here, they immediately give back another invasion platform, either with a road Dorito like this, through a curve over here, or with the other splitter, completing an unmeepled little city, increasing the size of the field by 3 further points, dropping a farmer like this, and connecting with an extra monastery. So yeah, this was the move for yellow, which they didn't notice. So it's good that our opponent also making mistakes. We found a very nice block here for a 50-50. What this move was about, I have no idea. Well, like, actually, I do have an idea. They are trying to... they're trying to not allow you the quadruple city tile there, which actually makes a lot of sense. But you now get a scoring tile, which is nice. They also get another meeple trapped. And now they get a completed city. And it now becomes an incredibly interesting game. So whenever something like this happens, you know, it's a big change in the game. They get 2 meeples back. You get 2 meeples back. They got some points on the scoreboard. Now it's time to just reevaluate the whole position again. And at this point, this is not a tournament game, but let's say if you were playing a tournament game, like this is where you think for like 2 minutes. And before you do anything, just see like, what do I need to do to accomplish the win? And let's try to do exactly that. So we're 10 points ahead on the scoreboard. And how we're doing for points. So in these here blocked meeples, our opponent has 7. And we have 6. So they are +1 over here. In this here situation, they have 9 and we have 6. So it's -3 for us. So overall, we're 6 points ahead, assuming that the fields are going to get unified. An important distinction is that if the fields are not going to get unified, which at this point is unlikely, then we're still going to be ahead by a couple of points. By 3 points to be exact, because they have a 9-point field here and we have a 6-point field here with chances for some green squares. Now we know that there may be not that many city caps, but let's say if you don't even, or if you're not like fully aware of it. So what are the scoring opportunities here? With 3 meeples remaining per side, if the fields don't get unified, I see that this game could be easily decided by monasteries. So there are 3 monasteries. So there's an odd number of monasteries, which means that one side is more likely to draw more monasteries. Well, one side is going to draw more monasteries than the other. It's either going to be 0-3, 1-2, 2-1, or 3-0. The side that gets a bit that gets at least 2 monasteries can do something like this, or like this. And this cluster is really annoying to deal with because, like, how are you going to compensate it with these road tiles? Okay, you can get 4 points for a city, maximum 8 points if you like have the perfect combo. Maybe you can finish this city, but actually you can't because it's just so unbelievably easy to block. I guess the only way how we can finish that city if you get this here tile, and then you do it like this, and then your opponents can block with the road tile, then you score 10 points over here. So this is like an outside scoring opportunity available. What else? Their road. With roads, really not many opportunities at all. The best thing that I can see is 4 points over here. So I'm probably going to perceive roads as just farming tiles. So this makes me believe that I probably want to unify the fields, and I probably want to preserve at least parity on them. If I can manage to drop some more farmers and drain my opponents of meeples as well, then even if they get a couple monasteries, I can withstand that because the meeples are going to be tight for the field fight. The question is, how do we exactly do that? I have 3 candidate moves. First of all, option 1 is just take care of unifying the field. Because if this here gets blocked, well, you're still doing all right because you're ahead by 3 points, but then the game just becomes a bit too monastery dependent, and maybe that's not exactly what you want to have. Another option is we leave the square for later and we try to invade. There are 2 spots. One is over here, through a straight line with 3 straight lines remaining, and one is over here through a curve like this. Of course, there's also another spot over here. My first instinct is actually to just make this simpler move over here. And this is because we have an even number of invasion platforms. My logic is like this. If your opponent uses this platform, I use that one. If your opponent uses this one, I use that one. The only way how it could get wrong is, let's say if we go here, your opponent does this, then we go here, and then your opponent manages to block our invasion. That actually would be pretty bad. So you decide to go here first, which again makes a lot of sense. Now, we can debate as to which platform is better. I do like your choice. Now, we can see here from the tile counter that you have only 3 options to invade here. Whereas if your opponent goes here, they're going to have 5 options through the curve. But then you also need the curve to connect the field in the first place. So in that way, your move makes sense. They now drop a farmer here, making things pretty interesting. They're now losing by 6 points. It's also an important distinction because their farmer has 0 points and you have 3 points over here. Yeah, it's actually not obvious exactly how we want to deal with this. Because let's say if we make the natural move, I guess the natural, well, first of all, let's look at some options, because it gets actually very tricky. If we go here and unify the farmers, then let's say we're quasi-tied, but then just yellow goes here and invades through the curve, and then we're losing 2 against 3 with no viable platform for re-invasion. Actually, this is really bad. Yeah, I don't think we can afford to unify the fields. So we need to do one of 2 things. We need to maybe go here and now try to get the 3rd farmer for us so that we get the majority, or we just ignore it and do something like this and we go here for 6 points. But then the same problem remains. Your opponent can just draw like a curve here, invade, and then they get a monastery and they're still going to have the majority on this field. And then what, right? I guess you could also try and win fieldless. That's an interesting idea. If they unify the fields, the total value of the farm is going to be 15 points. Before the fields are counted, remember you were ahead by 6. So let's say you're going to be down 9 for the price of 1 meeple. You might also get to preserve this here guy for 3 points, in which case you're going to be down 6 for the price of 1 meeple, and then you go here, you get a monastery. It seems like a very thin route of winning. So actually, I do like your move here. I'm not sure if I need the meeple on this monastery, though, but yeah, maybe I don't need the meeple on the monastery, because it just doesn't score as much. But, you know, I don't know. It does make sense. But the idea is that we're still ahead, and we're trying to block that square. Yeah, and so that's why they chose to defend. And that's why I think at this point you should have blocked. But then again, I'm not sure. So let's say they go here, and the idea is still to invade everything. But it's now so tricky, right? Because I guess what we want to do, if we want to fight for the field, then we need to do this. And we need to invade over here. We need to take care of that invasion platform. They also drew one of the straight lines which we need over here. Let me just try to read some of your comments and then come back to this, because it's getting pretty complicated. Oh yeah, so Elias is mentioning the quadruple city tile. And either side, this means that whichever side gets the quadruple city tile, they can't drop a farmer with it. There's also another tile, there's this one available, with which you can also not drop a farmer. Well, normally you can, but this here side is just completely empty, and we've taken away other farming platforms. So let's see what happens if we just block. By the way, so we were ahead 6, 10 after the monastery. If we just go here, we are ahead 11. If your opponent now does this, which they should, then we're going to be ahead 8. 8 points for the price of a meeple. I think actually then we probably win. Because your opponent's... I guess your opponent's going to win if they get back-to-back monasteries, but that's already harder to do. And you know what? We can even like use a road tile here, try to break that spot. Yeah, that's very interesting. I think you should go for this here move. Just trying to block everything, because there's another concern as well. Your opponents can just get a monastery here for 8 points, and then go here, and then neutralize the farms, and then just outrun you on the scoreboard. And it's a very difficult situation, so it's you either need to go here and just separate all the farms, in which case you're trying to win in one of several ways. So you probably win just holding on to your point lead if you get at least one monastery. And maybe if your opponent gets both monasteries, you can just build up this here road for a couple more points. But then if you do this, there's also another problem. Your opponent has a 7-point move available over here with one of the city caps. Yeah, so it actually becomes just very problematic. So your move makes a lot of sense. You just decided to farm, right? But then you see, if you do that, then your opponent, I think, messed up. Now they have a different win condition because they invested so many farmers. Then they can just do this. Now, if they block, don't they just win pretty easily? Well, let me think about this again. So you dropped a farmer. And you are now, what, 10? You're going to be 14 points ahead for the price of 2 meeples. They're going to go here, are going to be 15 points ahead for the... No. Yeah, 14 points ahead for the... 15 points ahead for the price of 2 meeples. Yeah, because I needed to count in this here road. Yeah, if yellow just does this, then even though they're losing 15 points, they have just unbelievable scoring opportunities. So first of all, they can get 3 points here for free by unifying your farms. They can get 3 extra points for free by also neutralizing this farmer. So that's already 6 points with no meeple investment. That's already 9 points. And then they can score 7 points over here with no meeple investment with the city cap. And then they can also score monasteries with a meeple investment, but then it's typically should be enough. And then, like, almost every tile is productive. Oh, also, by the way, yeah, Elias is pointing out in the chat that yellow has a winning sequence with a splitter plus Dorito. If they get a splitter here, they get 7 points. Then with the road Dorito, they can get 10 points for the city, plus 6 points for both farmers, and that's just devastating. So I think this is where, I mean, it's not that easy to see, but like, I can see how the Greek player sees that he's just 15 points behind in this position. But to realize that you're 15 points behind, but you're still the favorite to win, just because every single tile remaining except the quadruple city tile gives you just incredible scoring opportunities. That is just something very, very hard to see. And then he does this. He tries to unify all the farmers, but then the question is, how is he planning to win? How is he getting an extra farmer? I guess I see how, because like you do this, and then your opponent wants to use that platform. But then there's the problem. If your opponent is hoping for a tile that goes there, which he wants to use as a farming platform, if he's hoping for that platform, well then he might as well just score 7 points there with all the fields separate. So he doesn't need to do all that kind of stuff. I guess the advantage now, he's also creating a 9-point monastery spot. I mean, it's very difficult to argue with that as well. You complete your invasion. Your opponent now decides to drop a farmer there. And now you try to block, and also have to say incredibly precisely. Well, actually, let me think about it. How incredibly precise is that? It is precise, right? Oh, yeah, actually, I think regardless of how you turn this, you have the same number of blocking tiles. Yeah, because obviously the straight line, you need to go over here. And then the curve, with the curve you can block towards the curve, but that's true regardless. And with this here tile, you can block. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So your opponent takes the points. You successfully block. And now what? Let's try solve this endgame from their perspective now, because the field is now tied. But I think overall you're like 1 point ahead. Let me try and remember this. Or you're behind a couple of points. It doesn't matter. Still, if you connect to the field, then you win. I'm just trying to figure out, is there any way how your opponent can outrun? Probably not. Ah, I know what they can do. They should create another field connection opportunity. Yeah. What yellow should do, they should anticipate that you're going to connect over here. then they need to do something like this. And then they hope that you get the straight line to connect, which allows then them to get something like, I don't know, a curve. Then red gets the quadruple city tile. And then you do this. It's also actually important to figure out exactly the point count, because who's going to be ahead if the field is shared? I think it's still yellow. So again, 4 here, 3 here for yellow, that's 7. These roads cancel out. That's 4. These cancel out. Ah, that's the problem. I think yellow is toast regardless. Yellow is like -4 because of this here monastery. Huh. Isn't that interesting? Yes, I think yellow just can't really win. I think the only real way how yellow can win is either by drawing both straight lines and not allowing red to connect, or just by going here and here somehow and blocking before red gets one of the straight lines. Let me just think some more about it for a second. Or I'm just going to double check if you all have any ideas in the chat, in case there might be a slight delay there. Yeah, so I think Mr. Litsardopoulos is just purely relying on blocking the square now. Because even if he were to successfully invade here, red is going to prevail by a couple of points. Yeah, so he just decides to meeple a monastery. You continue this. He tries to block, but just in time, you get the tile to connect. And you even get... Okay, they do this, yeah, whatevs. And then you get an extra point. Absolutely fascinating game. Yeah, very instructive at field fight, because a lot of it depended on the number of connection platforms. So typically, if there's an even number of connection platforms, then you can delay your field's connections. Because if your opponent takes one platform, you can take the other one. If there is an odd number of connection platforms, then you gotta be quick. And here, from your perspective, being quick completely paid off. And then this is where Dark Passenger maybe just didn't see their fieldless win condition, perhaps. Yeah, instead of fighting for the field, they should have just given up and just tried to make out the points elsewhere. You know, going over here, having separated farms, that's the main point, and then trying to score 7 points over here and some 6-8 points over here. Yeah, I think Dark Passenger would have won. So it's interesting game from their perspective. From your perspective, it's absolutely excellent field fight, seriously, which appears to be your main strength. Before that, I get some very nice tactical blocking at the start, especially, you know, recognizing these here tiles. The moment where it started going wrong, I think it's more psychology and less Carcassonne. You kind of seem to get quite complacent when you got that big lead, and then just started kind of dropping around meeples in places which needed to be dropped. You know, like this one over here, which somehow end up surviving, but you know, at what cost, giving your opponent this here city. This 2-point road, which really is inexplicable. Then the monastery build up, I think, is just a Carcassonne thing, just kind of knowing when to delay building up your monastery when there are better tiles of combos available, and just prioritization in general. Like, for example, this. I think if you just get this here city finished, then you probably win this game a little bit earlier. So, ended up being quite close in the end. Didn't have to be, of course, but it's good that we did because we got to see a very interesting field fight. Of course, congratulations, by the way, for defeating a 2-time world champion without knowing it. And yeah, good luck in your future games. Hopefully you could take something away from that one. So, another hot beverage break, and then we're going to be moving to our third and possibly most complicated game. Alrighty, and we're back for a final game of the night, which was sent to us by the player with screen named Carcassonne. So this is going to be already a couple hundred points higher rated, and our opponent also is a master. Our antagonist is a member of the Italian national team. Alright, so we're going to start off with a couple of natural moves. Here we're not the starting player. Here we start with natural stuff. And build up the city whilst also restricting our opponent. So that's a nice start with an 8-0 lead on the scoreboard. And then Barry goes here, which is pretty nice for her, you know, because she now can do this, continue her road. Then, of course, we just score. It's also a good choice of taking 2 points, kind of taking out a monastery spot. And then we end up taking out that spot, but actually it's a fantastic place because it looks like the square is restricted, but it really isn't. We will be picking up this city in all likelihood. There's just so many tiles that fit here, and then there's a shielded tile already prepared to happen. If your opponent takes this city, which they probably should, then you can now go here and start blocking. Then you're also controlling this here road. It's just a fantastic monastery placement. And your opponent now finally gets 5 points on the scoreboard, and now, believe it or not, is going to be the decisive move of the game. So do let me know in the chat which kind of ideas what you have, and then we'll just go through general thoughts how to approach opening positions. Well, of course, we need to exclude a couple of moves. This, of course, is not an option, because then we'll be losing our monastery pretty easily. This is a sort of nice way to obstruct your opponent's city at the expense of the safety of our monastery, but of course, it's really between 2 moves. It's between this here block or this here scoring move. That's kind of a way to start a road, or maybe a farmer or something like this. Now, the scoring, from a scoring perspective, this here move, the move that you played in the game is probably best. Because it does a bunch of things, like it takes out a monastery spot, it starts an unblockable road, it takes care of a road end. But this is the moment where you gotta think not just points, you gotta think equity. Like, if you go here, the amount of damage that the city would experience is huge. Even if red might be able to defend herself, like maybe if she gets a starting tile or something like this. And by the way, even if she does, we can still reinvade, and also that's super unlikely in the first place, because there's just, like, if you don't restrict this square, there's so many options, like so many good options how she can continue the city. Like, even something like a Dorito with the farmer already can cause you a lot of problems. And if you can go here, and then maybe if you on your next move you get something like a vanilla city cap, then the advantage that you get from having her city blocked is just absolutely fantastic. So it seems to be a case, like, this here move, it seems to be a move it seems to be a sign of somebody who maybe has watched too many Alexey videos. Because I know I like doing stuff like this myself quite a lot, and advocate for like efficient scoring, but every position is different, and you don't want to spend too much effort for blocking, but you do want to make these here moves, which is just a very easy way to restrict your opponent. So we don't want expensive blocking, but we do want cheap blocking, and that sounds like a missed opportunity. Your opponent just continues. Now, of course, we need to start stacking, which is all lovely. Barry just continues. Now we get to start a new city, which is also lovely. Also having quite a lot of discipline to not fill this square first, but go for the juiciest one instead. Now a bit of a miss from your opponent. She does this, whereas she should have gone here. Controlling the city is so much better than controlling the road. And now this is, I think, another tactical miss from green here. You see, now we already have a valuable tile, so we now can't really use this one and block that city. Oh, by the way, also, if you're going to say that you didn't want to block it because you didn't want to obstruct your own city, I understand. That's a legit concern. It's just that the way we damage her city does not even compare to the way we're slightly obstructing our own. But I did think of that. So now I need to start sorting out problems. And the move that you played here was scoring 2 points. And honestly, it's not bad necessarily. It actually scores 4 points, 2 for the road, 2 for the monasteries. But in these here situations, just going here, finishing the road, and possibly even maybe dropping a farmer, just taking care of a meeple is so much more important. And also we will be obstructing our monastery as well. Because the thing is, well, for this here square, we can use other crossroads. Or we can use, I guess, like a regular curve or something like this. For this square, we can only use this here tile. So it was better to just go there, especially since we're about to continue our city, which is going to lead to the obstruction of our road and so on and so on. Now our opponent builds up. Here we probably decide to get a meeple back, which again makes a lot of sense. Now Barry builds up, he also builds up. And now this is actually pretty interesting. So she's now really wants to finish the city, and this forces you into an unenviable position. I would be considering this move, trying to finish my monastery with another monastery. With only 3 remaining, it's maybe less important to do so. So I do like now your idea to go here. And we can even still block her city. There's a lovely pattern which we can make if we get something like a straight line over here, and then we get a splitter, and then we even get a 9-point farmer, so it's still a big threat. The problem is that invading the city is nowhere near as good as blocking it. We have to invade just because it's a big threat. But if we were to block it for just 4 or 5 points, the advantage that we get is so much greater. Now she starts obstructing our cities, and we do this, which is okay. I would have maybe just been a bit more patient with the city. I would have done something like this, probably. Now Barry does this. I guess she does not want the exact scenario that I described happening. And you invade the city, which And you even drop a farmer there, which again makes sense. I wonder if it was worth delaying. Maybe going over here. That was an option. But no, your move definitely makes a lot of sense. Because she can also get this here Dorito tile and block us. Actually, wait a minute. If I think about this. Wait, why did we connect to the city? I sort of... Because when I was analyzing this game the first time, I was just assuming this move is automatic. But there isn't really any reason why we need to be so urgent there. Yeah, so actually I'd just rather build up my city at the bottom. Oh, I guess I can see why. Maybe you don't want her to get a Dorito and then the split her. But then also, how bad is the split her? That's the question. Maybe it's not that bad at all. Okay, you get 8 points, she gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14. I guess the farmer is the problem there, but you can still drop a farmer later, like with a straight line or something. Yeah, so maybe keeping the options open was more interesting because this is the reason why I wanted to save this game for last. Our opponents go for the content move, and it's not only the content move, it's also correct. From her perspective, she's behind 11 points on the scoreboard, a soon-to-be completed city, and a monastery. So it's a really good position for green, and she decides to take decisive action. But that's the thing also now. It's not a 50-50 chance. It's much better than this because there's so few city tiles remaining. Then the idea of the forced quadruple city tile is absolutely in the cards. Imagine if Carcassonne here has something like a simple Dorito and goes over here, which is the best move. And then Barry draws a road tile. And then green gets the quadruple city tile. Suddenly there are no places to use that tile, and then the idea to place it here is the only possible move. So I do like Barry's idea here, and I can understand the reason why you connect it, because like, I mean, surely she's not gonna do this. Surely she's not that crazy. But no, apparently she is, and it's a good thing for her, because you're gonna see what's gonna happen sooner or later. I think everybody already has a feeling for this. Now you do get your lovely city at the bottom, and also another spot to use the quadruple city tile, but she just drops the quadruple city tile herself, and now it's a completely even game. So it's again one of those cases where like you had an advantage, but your opponent just had too many comeback routes. So first of all, just this whole situation could have been avoided with a simple straight line move instead of trying to be overly efficient over here. It's really that one thing. And second, maybe that's something that, again, I didn't see the first 2 times I was analyzing this game. Once you were ahead, once you realized that you were ahead, like you connecting over here and just getting 4 or 5 extra points is maybe something that can be a bit delayed just for the sake of avoiding this disaster scenario. And actually, I think I also understand. If you invade there, there's still a possibility for a disaster scenario. She can invade here regardless, or you can invade here actually. Maybe I would have done this as you with a city cap, and then she can use an extender plus a triple city. Yeah, so that's the peculiarity of this here configuration. Anyway, so it wasn't like a bad move or anything. It actually is a move that made a lot of sense. And really all you have to do there is just like use a curve to cover it up. You just, unfortunately, you didn't get any curve. So no, so that was actually fine. It's just really about not blocking that city much early with a straight line. That's the thing that's all about. Elias is saying the starting tile was a blunder. I'm not sure about this, because like avoiding the quadruple city, the forced quadruple city tile is not the most important thing in the world, because at the end of the day, from your perspective, from Green's perspective, Barry can just draw the quadruple city tile herself. Now, certainly avoiding the forced quadruple city tile is important, but not to the point that would sacrifice our own objectives or that would sacrifice points. And also the thing with the forced quadruple city tile, like, it's okay to have that idea for a couple of moves. Then we can tend to it later. So I don't think this move with the starting tile was necessarily wrong by our protagonist, because we do want to start finishing cities soon, and I think that does make sense. So you take 2 points over here. Maybe, actually, I think taking 2 points over here was absolutely fine. But I can see how you want to maybe build this monastery more efficiently and then also block another monastery spot. Now she starts a new city, and you decide to start a new city herself, but actually maybe I would have preferred to take care of this here square a little bit more. I would have preferred to just tie her road, but I can understand how you want to be a bit more efficient. Now Barry does this, which I don't like. I think that's a mistake. I think she needed to do something like this, because she's helping your monastery so much, whereas she only helping her road a little bit, and she's just only improving the quality of this here ticking time bomb. Because here, at the very least, she would be taking out 2 monastery options for you, and she'd be forcing you to go over here and finish her road for you. And also, you already need a road monastery for this here square. That was definitely a miss from her part. You now try to block her whilst building up her city, and you see she's forced now to finish the road, also dropping a compensation farmer, but now you have just a fantastic spot for a monastery. You're also now building up a city. She's now trying to attack. Now it's an interesting situation here. This really is worth thinking for a couple of minutes when you're in real-time game, because this curve is going to do a lot for board shaping. So first of all, option 1 is how much do we care about fields? If the answer is not too much, we can just go here, allow our opponent to bully us with her temporary meeple majority, just hoping that we get this monastery tile, and then we can outrun any fields. Also, if we go here, we can now start going for crossroads and trying to play against her monastery. Option 2, we start dropping farmer ourselves. But then there can be a problem that she can just go, no, let's say if we drop a farmer here. I don't like this. I don't like being with one meeple for a little bit too long. I feel like the field is not that big enough in the first place. Second, it's still possible to get some obstruction tiles here and prevent the development of a big field in the first place. Once that red has committed here, all we need to do is just get something like a horse tile, which is no longer existent, I see, but something, I don't know, some sort of barricade. Maybe even at the expense of our monastery. That would not allow her to develop this into something big. But let's say if we don't do any of these things, we can think, which shape do we want to build our monastery into? My first instinct is to do something like this, with the idea of using straight line tiles. Something like a crossroads and a straight line. Yeah, the reason I do like this move is because it surprisingly strongly restricts this here field. It restricts it to exactly 0 green squares, which is always nice to have in your opponent's fields. I think that's the move. Oh, you found it. That's very nice. It's not an obvious move, if you ask me. So red wins the coin flip for the monastery. You still get a meeple back. but not a great advantage on the scoreboard anymore. Still a fantastic position for green. Now we can start a new city. We can drop farmers. Yeah, starting a new city makes a lot of sense, but I strongly dislike this here placement. The main problem with this here move is that it helps connect all the fields, which is not in your interest at all. You want to keep your opponent's fields small. Yes, I do think it's quite a big miss. A move that you needed to play is starting a new city over here, like this, which would have been just incredibly annoying. So first of all, well, I'm not sure. There's still one more road monastery remaining, but like if you go here, you deny her crossroads. You can also go here and now try to put further pressure on the square. There may be some, yeah, there's just no, I see there are not many places to start new cities. Like, because going over here maybe is a better option. Because at least it starts playing against this here square, against the expansion of that here farmer. Yeah, so it's either here or here, but it's interesting how this board is devoid of good city starting squares. Now red gets the best tile in the deck, where she gets to finish her city and also blocked ours, when there are no triple city tiles remaining at all that fit there. So we get a curve, again like a difficult decision. Do we unite the fields or do we not? Because you see, now this here option becomes a bit more dangerous. If we now unite all the fields, by our own hand, we've made this red meeple closer to the general thing. Also, now that we have this here meeple blocked where it's at meeple disadvantage. So yeah, it now gets tricky. I think it's really between this move or between dropping a farmer over here and just trying to equalize, saying, you know, I have 2 farmers, you have 2 farmers, and there are no very good invasion platforms in the field. We can just stay tied. In which case, you're probably doing well, because 8 points for a trap meeple is actually not that bad at all. And you're going to get this city soon completed. The move which I don't like is this one. The reason why I don't like it is because it goes against our monastery planning. Now, I can see the idea that you want to build here with a curve, but again, with monastery builds up, you got to be more patient. So it's a similar theme from the previous game, but just much, much more subtle. There's still 5 tiles that fit into these 2 squares. Like, we want to have some combination of straight line and crossroad tiles in any order, and we just wait and wait and wait super patiently. Because curves we can use in other places, maybe here. The problem with this move, it sort of forces you to invest in another meeple, then your opponent can like start obstructing the square. Now you need curves everywhere. Now also you have another problem that you actually don't have a good use for crossroads anymore. I guess you do, you can finish this road, but then this city is going to get blocked. And also you don't have good use for straight lines anymore. Because again, if you go here, you get blocked. So yeah, actually I think it's a rather subtle but a mistake. It's another of those cases where you just wait and wait and wait, and you need to get these exact tiles to finish your monastery. Yeah, and it can only work well for you. So imagine if you get 2 straight lines, then you go here and you start a much longer road, like a road like this, which is just fantastic for 10 points. If you get 2 crossroads, then you get 3 points here, and you get 2 points here, and you get 2 meeples back without any further investment. And if you get a combination of the 2, then you just get like 1 fewer points or something like this. Yeah, so your opponent just keeps building, and you get the crossroads. And of course you get the crossroads. And just imagine if this tile weren't here, just like how much better this move would have been. Because now you start doing creative stuff, and that's good. You still want to preserve the chances of completing everything, but your opponent now goes over here, which now becomes a bigger problem. And this is, I think, where you make a miss. So she's building a farmer. And it's now quite difficult to decide what exactly to do. My first instinct is just to go here and allow my monastery to be blocked, because in case it does, at the very least, it's 8 points against 6, so it's just a winning mini battle. This means that her farmer does not get to support this guy, and then we can later safely unite the field or use another meeple to invade the new top farm. Another option is to go over here. And that one I do like, because it is taking out a monastery. It still leaves an option for a road monastery, but a field monastery no longer fits there, and you can still get your road. You kind of want to have your meeples back, really. The problem, of course, is that if she goes here and drops a farmer, then she's going to have a farmer majority. But, that's actually fine, because if she invades through your road, you get to play it. You get to do a Mexican standoff here. So, for example, if she wants to eat up your farmer, she is forced to finish your road, in which case you're just going to use your newly recovered meeple to drop a farmer elsewhere. So, also, sometimes she doesn't get a city cap, and then you can try and obstruct her city regardless. So I think this is the move here. It's between this and this. Instead, it just took 2 points, which doesn't do all that much for you. Barry starts a new road. Then you probably continue your... Oh, okay, so I don't think I fully get it. I would have just continued my city. This move also actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, this move makes a lot of sense. I do like it, because it's trying to create a blocking platform, and Barry now needs to make a decision whether she needs to drop a second farmer or not. If she overinvests on the field, then you can just block this square. Now that she has committed a monastery, then it's actually in your interest to block that square. But if she doesn't drop a farmer, then you have a platform that you can use. Okay, so you do get to finally finish your monastery, but unfortunately this now means that this red guy is threatening the big field. Barry now does this, which is pretty interesting. She really wants to develop her field. That's actually a pretty strong move. I think if I were her, I would have done something like this. But her starting a new city doesn't make a lot of sense. You decide to clean off the city cap simply so that she doesn't get it. And then again, very interesting move here from the Italian. Oh, wait, no farmer. Huh, that's interesting. I'm not sure how much I like it. I guess the reason why she doesn't want to drop a farmer there is because it's just so easy for you to get one of these here blocking tiles. Yeah, now I even keep wondering why she'd do that. I think if I were her, I would have preferred some sort of a blocking sequence. Maybe somewhere else. I guess she also wants to protect her monastery. Yeah, that makes sense. And then she can also get this, and she can actually just block this square and develop herself a bigger farm. Now with a straight line, you don't have all that many options. I guess you can protect yourself a little bit, but probably it's time to start dropping some farmers. And you do. That's also a good place to drop farmers, because you can choose whether to connect to this here lower farm through the crossroads or to this upper farm. But preferably you just connect to neither and you wait. Barry now finds a very strong blocking move, realizing that you could have this here exact city cap. Now it's super tempting to go over here, but you decide not to do that because you... Well, actually, now that you've invested that farmer, I wonder if we do want to connect this here guy in the center. Maybe you want to go here. Maybe you want to get the road monastery. But then if we do that, Barry can invade over here. Yeah, it's tricky. My intuition also tells me that you want to do kind of something like this. You want to make a waiting move. and not actually draw anything there. Now we know that it ends up being quite disastrous. Because you would have gotten yourself a lovely 9-pointer. But again, she would have invaded over here, so maybe that's fine. You decide to complete the farmer invasion, but then maybe that's a tad too early. I don't know. Maybe it was okay to just like take 2 points over here. We can still invade later with a curve. Because you see, like if she goes here, then suddenly she has the majority with this her farmer. And also there's this platform to attack. Yeah, again, it's as usual, it's tricky. Now Barry, yeah, goes for another farming invasion. Then you decide to finish the city. And it's also quite fortunate that this here square gets blocked regardless. This here move doesn't accomplish much, but she doesn't really have any good moves. And now it's time to try and figure out this endgame. So how exactly do we win here? Because I do feel that we can absolutely win here from Green's perspective. So what do we have? We have 9 points on the scoreboard. We have 8 points over here. Actually, 9 points on the scoreboard get compensated by this here farmer. So we have 8 points over here. 3 points over here, 1 point over here, that's 12. Your opponent has 4 points over here, 7 here, 6 here. So that's 17. So we're minus 5. And you have 9 points over here. And your opponent, let's say, soon is going to have 12 points over here. So like we're down 8 points. But we also have an extra meeple, which makes me think it's all not that bad. How can we win this? Maybe we can create a field attacking platform. Or maybe, you know what? I think I see a move. How about we go here and we just block this invasion square. Then, if your opponent invades the field, she will open up this here attacking platform at the top. In which case we can use something like this to drop a farmer and invade from above and win like that. And oh, okay, you did something similar, I guess. So you that's actually pretty neat, because you already open another field invasion platform. And also you make it so that if she wants to connect through the monastery, then she gives you a meeple back. Okay, yeah, that also works. And now she connects to the field, so we can do again a recount. Well, else we have 6 points on roads. So I just did forget everything again. 7 points on roads, 9 on field. Okay, I'm going to do the whole recount again. I'm not too good at this. So these here cancel out. We have 8 here and 9 on the scoreboard. 3, 1, 3. That's 7, 7, 8, 9. That's 24. She has 4, 7. That's 11. That is 6 more. That's 17. And the field is worth what? 12 points. That's 19, right? No, that's 29. So are we down by something like 4 points? Is it really this close? Because it feels like we're down by more. I want to do this again. Hi, Ian. Wait. Why did I lose it again? Yeah, I need to work on my point counting for the World Championship, but... So just bear with me for a second, okay? Again, we had 24. I'm pretty sure about that, because it was 7, 8, and 9. Scoreboard, city, roads. Right. Barry has 12 here, 4 here. That's 16. 7 here, that's 23. 6 here, that's 29. So we're down 5 points, which actually makes it pretty obvious what we need to do here. We just need to invade the field and then we probably win. Well, actually, not probably. So it's pretty obvious where the invasion spot is. It's over here. Because then you win 66% of the time, right? So you win 2 out of 3 times. But then what your opponent can do, she can get this tile and go over here and then get a curve and connect. And so she's going to have... So basically there's like a 1 in 6 scenario how she can reinvade. Basically this means that this is a 50-50 shot if she... Well, because 2/3 minus 1/6 is a half, right? So you have a 50-50 shot to win the game here. And then maybe even a little bit more if your opponent makes a mistake. So this actually appears to be a pretty straightforward endgame. You invade the field. There's nothing much that she can do. But instead, I thought you just invaded through the wrong part, which would only give you 1 in 6 chance. That's already like a big difference. 1 in 2, and here you have only 1 in 6. But then you just take the city, and this part I just don't get. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe you just miscounted the points. Maybe you just forgot you had a farm. Because I assume that if you make that move, then you must think that you're in the lead, which you aren't. Yeah, so there was a 50-50 chance of connecting. Barry... Well, at least you can be safe in knowing that you would not have won otherwise. But, of course, that's not a reason to make such mistakes. She takes 2 points. Yeah, she also gets herself kind of very nice scoring combo. Ah, I see what you wanted to do. You wanted to go here and continue this road. But then you still don't have enough, I think. Because with this, you put yourself at -1. And with the curve, you get 2 more. You're +1. But then Barry can just do anything. Like, she can take 3 points for the city, for example. And that's already enough to put her over the edge. Yeah, so probably just a points miscalculation that you're looking here. And she even gets herself this road. And she should be winning this by around 7, maybe? Something like this. Yeah, 7 exactly. So at least our endgame points calculation was correct. So, yeah, so what are the takeaways from this game? Well, there's several. Now, of course, the end game mistake, it can happen to everybody. Again, do let me know in the chat when you watch this. But I'm going to assume that it's just simply a points miscalculation, that you were thinking that you were ahead. Because obviously that you would have noticed the field. You obviously must have noticed the field attacking option. But the main part is really that this game illustrates how far-reaching can be the consequences of early game blocking or lack thereof. Yeah, of course, there was this here city which became a threat, which were forced to attack, which Barry desperately re-attacked, and then as a result she got a bit fortunate into getting that tile early. But if only this here road is placed, then she really has no business doing it. Also, that's interesting that this road here ended up with just 1 point for the entire game, even though there were some options, like you could have gone here, finishing it, and then going here, pre-finishing a bit later. So yeah, so that's just simple idea that blocking your opponent's city in the opening can still be useful, especially it can be done for a cheap price. But another interesting option is this field, not option, but takeaway from this game is this field geometry here and here. Kind of how starting this city in a way which brings this guy a bit too close was the source of some problems later for you in the game. And the third one, believe it or not, is again, like in the game 2, the monastery buildup. This here move, which looks perfectly natural, starting a road with a curve remaining over here, but knowing how the rest of the game looks like, how you need a curve here, how you might need a curve over here later, and so on. Just having that patience and controlling the geometry of your road and waiting for those straight lines and crossroads could have possibly led to a better result. Yeah, because you see, as a result, actually, this road ended up in a precarious situation. Oh, hi, Carcassonne. Good to know that you're here. Max Story Bravo is asking, what do you think about connecting to the bottom field through the crossroads using the Dorito with the road? That's a lovely idea. I guess the reason I wouldn't do it because it just doesn't win often enough. Yeah, it only wins 1 in 3 times. Oh, wait, you meant here earlier. That wins 40% of the time. And I think 40% of the time is not good enough. And actually, we still might lose, no? So let's say if we go here, and let's assume that we connect on our last turn. Yeah, we get 10 instead of 5, because 1 for the road, and 9 for the field, instead of this. So actually, we only end up having 5 points more compared to what we had in the game. Yeah, we really needed that field at the top. And by the way, even that field might have not... Well, I mean, it would have been enough, like we would have won the game by 1 point or something. Yeah. So then it would have just not been enough. But then there's another problem. If we don't make that move or some version thereof, I was suggesting a different orientation, then instead of going here, Barry goes here and she gets 2 extra points. And then she might also get a curve, which she did, by the way, and continue her road for even longer. So in a vacuum, this idea totally works. But just because there were some other options, I don't think invading the 9-point field was simply enough. We would only be winning if we were to get this here meeple back in time for us to score. But it's an interesting option in any case. Well, yeah, 3 increasingly complicated games. So thank you everybody who shared your games. If you all want to be in future episodes, if you want your games to be featured, then feel free to reach out in the comments or using the channel email address or in a direct message in Board Game Arena. Always Happy to review new submissions. Of course, before you leave, make sure to meeple the like button for the algorithm, and in case you somehow still haven't, subscribe for more competitive Carcassonne content like this. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'ma see you soon.